Hello, Humane Marketers. Sarah Znekrocha here. Welcome to another episode of the Humane Marketing Podcast, a place to be for the generation of marketers who cares. This is the show where we talk about marketing your business in a way that feels good to you, is aligned with your values, and also resonates more with your conscious customers because it's not pushy, ethical, and also beautiful. So if you're a regular here, you know that I'm organizing the conversations around the 7 Ps of humane marketing. And if you're new here and this is your first time, welcome. I'm so excited you're here. You may want to download your one-page marketing plan with the 7 Ps of humane marketing in the form of a mandala at humane.marketing/one page, the number one and page. So again, humane.marketing/one page. And with that, with no further ado, let's dive into today's conversation. Hi, Louise. So good to hang out with you. Welcome to the Humane Marketing Podcast.
Thank you. It's so great to be here. I'm so excited to be able to connect with you again. As always, it's always a great conversation.
Yeah, and we did some prepping for this one because we're also collaborating on another collab workshop, and I'm really excited to have you on February 7th for the workshop that we do together around standing out authentically. But this is kind of like a teaser of this an hour and a half workshop. But we're not just teasing, we're always giving great value as well, right? For people who are valued listeners, they know this about us and me. So I look forward to dig in.
Me too.
I was thinking maybe you can start with how your story and how you moved out of corporate, I was going to say America, but corporate Canada. How you moved out of corporate Canada and then as a marketer and then started your own business and then realized, oh, okay, this is a different ballgame. I have to now, put myself out there and I have to sell myself and I still want to do it authentically. So yeah, take us there. Tell us that story, how that evolved.
Thank you. Yeah. So, I spent 20 years in corporate marketing and, my last role as a marketing leader, building marketing teams and functions and strategic, making them a strategic function. And so it was very demanding. I loved the work that I did. I loved the learning that I got from all of those 20 years in, developing myself as a marketer. And then in 2019, my role was eliminated and I was packaged and as part of a reorg. And then COVID hit. And, my initial thoughts were jump right back in and, and get on that hamster wheel again. And when COVID hit, I had an opportunity to really sit back and kind of go, well, what do I really love? What would I love? And instead of thinking that I need to do this, I was a single mom. Although my kids are older at the time, they're still, what I call on my payroll, because we're always supporting our kids. But, I also had an opportunity at that time to stop and really reflect. And for me, being authentic was something that I really struggled with. I'm an HSP, and in a fast-moving corporate environment, there isn't always room for us. It's not always understood. And so I tended to kind of push all of that aside. And when I had that opportunity to stop, I realized, I really want to take everything I've learned over the last 20 years and bring back. I should mention, before I spent 20 years in corporate, I had my own business. I was an entrepreneur for 15 years prior to jumping into corporate. And so there was a part of my heart that was like, I can help people, but I want to do it in a way that feels authentic to me. I need to honor that part of myself. And so I embarked on this journey to say, well, where do I go from here? I know a lot of things. I've built brands. I've built, marketing teams, and I love so many different aspects of it, but how do I distill that down to me, going from a team of 15 people to one? And so there was a part of me that was like, how do I even talk about who I am and how I'm different? Because as a marketer, you do a lot for other people and you're building all this communication, but I didn't know how to talk about how I was different. And so that felt like, the cobbler's got no shoes scenario where I didn't know how to talk about how I was different. And so I embarked on this this journey to try to self-discovery. And then I stumbled upon Fascinate. And for me, I'm a junkie of all of the Myers-Briggs and Strengths Finders and Enneagram. Like, I've done them all and I love them because they've helped me understand who I am from the inside out. But what I loved about Fascinate when I took the test was that it's an outside in perspective. It's how the world sees me when I'm at my best. And when I took it, I had an aha moment because it helps you understand the languages that you speak when you're in that flow state and you're excited and you're energized, like you and I are doing right now. I am a passion person, so I speak the language of communication and connection. But I'm also a very, 1 minute I can be very in tune with somebody, and the next minute I can be a hermit. I can be this very quiet person who's always analyzing a situation. And I always felt that there was something wrong with me. Maybe there's something broken about me, that I'm these opposite ends of the spectrum. And as it turns out, it's actually just who I am. And so when I learned that this is who I am and it's actually my superpower, I was able to kind of start leaning into that a little bit more, not a little bit, a lot more. And I embraced it to the point where, the anthem that I created for myself is my guidepost. It helps me now distinguish myself and lean in and just embrace that I'm different. And I'm okay with that now. It helped me understand and embrace that difference. And so now I've incorporated that, and it's part of what I do, because I believed so strongly in giving me the language, giving me the words that I could confidently feel like, yeah, this is really me, and here's how it's me. This is how it really is me. So it's been beautiful.
I feel so, obviously, with marketing like we're human, and this is very aligned with what we're doing here. And was it also in the COVID years that you came across the Marketing Like We're Human program? I remember you reached out to me. I'm like, oh, a fellow marketer. That is so great that other marketers are interested in that work. Was it during that time as well?
100%, because as I was trying to discover, there has to be a better way. I mean, I was in financial services and I still work in financial services in what I do now on my own, but I get to choose. And I work with very purpose-driven, mission-centered businesses. That became really important to me. And I didn't really know anybody else who felt that way about marketing. It's like, we do really good things, and there's a need for what we do, and there's a love of building strong brands that are authentic. But I was really searching for a community and a group that felt the same way that I did. And so my research led me to you. And I bought your first book and I did your program, and I was like, okay, I want to embrace and learn everything there is to know about what's been in my heart. But I've felt like this lone wolf in a sea of, marketers who are all about the bottom line and what are the sales targets and everything. And to me, it didn't feel, that's not me. That doesn't feel like who I am. I care about, doing good work, and I care about making, achieving results, but it's not what's driving me. What's driving me is, how do we do good in the world, and how do we make it a better place through what we know as marketers?
Yeah, I feel like you're a really good poster child for marketing, like we're human, because I mean, really, like, 2019, we're now in 2024. That is a very short framework for launching a business, right? And so it just shows me that you gave yourself that deep reflection. And yes, probably the first 2 years were a bit slow, right? It's like, okay, who am I? How am I different? How can I be authentic and yet stand out? But you gave yourself that time and invested in finding out who you are. And then now you're bringing that to the table. And look at you now, you have a thriving business. I mean, it really shows that slow and deep really, really works. And I think that's what we want to talk about here a little bit. Like why would we even pay attention to a workshop that's called Stand Out Authentically, right? Most people would just want to stand out, bottom line. It's like, okay, I want to stand out. But we're talking here about standing out and being authentic and being different. So why does that matter to
Yeah.
us? And I guess, and also to our clients, why does that matter so much?
Yeah, it's such a great reflection, because for most of my career, I did what I thought people wanted from me, and I ignored and pushed down what I was actually thinking or feeling, because I thought my value was in what I do for others and the
Right.
results that I give. But what I had the opportunity to reflect through COVID was and do that deeper dive on myself is to understand that was based and coming from a place of fear, not love. And
Right.
when I learned to love myself and take that time to sort of say, like, what matters to me, I feel there's this multiplication where I've lived this life that was divided between who I am and what I do. And when I embraced bringing all of that together and authentically being who I am in what I do and what I do, I'm multiplying. I've gone from being divided to multiply, where 1 + 1 now equals 3 for me, and the value that I feel like I add. And I'm attracting people who are more like me or who appreciate what I bring to the table. So yes, we can all have the same skills, but the satisfaction and the joy that I get from working with somebody who appreciates that authenticity that I bring to the table, and sometimes a bit of woo, and sometimes it's a lot of logic and information and my ability to see a light at the end of the tunnel and get us across the finish line. But I'm doing it with a deeper connection. And so there's just this, I don't know, this inner calmness that I have of of feeling like by bringing all of who I am to the table, I'm detracting those that don't care about that, which is great. There is somebody out there who is in alignment with that person. But for the person who cares about that authenticity and the purpose and the why we do what we do, I feel a greater amount of joy. And so my work doesn't feel like work. It's just making an impact and doing it in a way that just is in alignment with who I am in my soul.
Yeah, I think you just described the definition of a humane business, that it really, that's what it is for me. It's like, yes, it's a business, but it's a business that is aligned with who you are. And so it doesn't feel like work. And at the same time, it feels very joyful to work with clients and do create change. And you mentioned that inner calm or inner peace. I think that is such a big part of it. And it's underestimated, like it's undervalued. I feel like, we go out there and I know that a lot of people are like, well, what I need is tactics. What I need is, learn how to be on LinkedIn and publish on LinkedIn. Yes, you need that as well, but what you need first is this, understand who you are, your values, how you're wired, so that you can then come to whatever place you choose to be with this inner peace. And yeah, so let's go back to this work with Fascinate, right? Because that's what we're going to be talking about in the workshop. So tell us a little bit about, you mentioned it's kind of one of the assessments that tells you how the world sees you, rather than some of the other assessments like Myers-Briggs, Enneagram, where it comes from how you see the world.
Right.
How is this one different, and how maybe you can also share a little bit about Sally Hogshead, who created this whole work, and how did you go about finding all of this out? Like, I'm curious about that.
Yeah, you know what, it's really quite brilliant. So as a marketer, finding the words and the nuances of how you communicate became a fascination with me, especially because as a child, I was very introverted, and as an HSP, I learned to wall off how I felt and how I communicated, but it also became a fascination for me in my career. Going into marketing was something for me that I needed to do for others, what I really struggled to do for myself. And the outside in perspective, when you're with Sally, what I learned as I did my research, once I did the test, and I was so fascinated by my own results, I dug a little bit deeper and understood that, so Sally was a marketer, or is a marketer, and at heart, she was a very, very successful advertising writer. By the time she was 27, she had, she was one of the most decorated advertising writers working with some of the largest corporate brands. And she became really interested in understanding what makes brands so fascinating. It's not the amount of money that they spend. So she undertook to do this research, hired a research company, and they studied hundreds of thousands of brands globally to understand what makes them fascinating, what makes one brand more fascinating than another.
Mm.
And she distilled it together through all this research. They distilled this down to 7 languages. And I think it was in a conversation with her husband at the time, who said, what if we were able to do this for individuals? What if we were able to help people understand, leveraging what makes brands fascinating? What if we were able to make them understand what makes them fascinating? And when you fascinate somebody in a world that's filled with, distractions, if you think about how much time you have to capture someone's attention, it used to be 9 seconds. I think it might be down to 3, the scroll.
Or 2.5, yeah.
Or, and so but when you fascinate somebody, between competition, if you're in a business and you've got to get someone's attention, you're trying to get a prospect's attention in a world where commoditization, which is, everything is the same. Think of toilet paper. You go for the cheap, it's a race to the bottom from a price perspective. It's not about value. And then you've got the distractions. How do you get someone's attention? Well, you get their attention by fascinating them. And when they're fascinated, if you think about the times when you're fascinated by something, everything else falls off the plan, and you're totally zoned in and you're focused. And that's what the art of fascination is. But when you can't fake it, this is something you can't fake till you make it, right? It's innate in you, and everybody has one of these. We all speak these 7 languages of the Fascinate system, or the languages. We all speak them all, but there's 2 languages, and one in particular, that when you're speaking that language, you're like in this zone of, I could riff on this all day. I'm in my zone of genius. For some people, that's the language of power and confidence, and they come in a room and they just command the room, and they are the decision makers. And for someone else, it might be about trust and loyalty. They might speak the language of trust, which is that loyal person that you can always count on. Others, it's the language of listening, and you're that quiet person in the room who's paying attention, and people might not think that you're even there, like, you're not paying attention, and then you drop this bomb of, well, what about this? Because you're analyzing and paying attention to the whole room. And so whatever language you speak, when you're able to speak that language, you will fascinate those who connect with you on that level. So it creates this deeper connection with people. And by virtue of understanding how you fascinate somebody, it allows you to be more of who you are, because you're not trying to be somebody else. You can have the same skills and have gone to the same school, and come out, 2 writers who are equally skilled, but one is going to have a language that is is going to connect more deeply with somebody. And don't we all want to have a world where we're connecting deeply with people that we get to engage with on a daily basis? So Fascinate allows us to do that. And I was so fascinated by it that I actually got certified, because I said, this is part of my toolbox. At the time, I was already working on brands and helping businesses build their brands. And for me, being able to bring that to the individual that I work with in a company, it's like, let's understand your language and the language of the people in your team, because it also helps you create this balance on your team of, you might have somebody who's a really, really good person, really skilled, but if they're in a role where they're not able to speak their language, they might feel like they're in quicksand. Alert is the language of details. And for some people, that lights them up, the ability to cross T's and dot I's and think about the future and think about risk mitigation. For others, it makes them want to gouge their eyeballs out, right? And if you're someone who is in a role that you're passion driven and you need those connections and relationships, but your role requires you to be doing this work that is what we call your dormant advantage, your least engaging and natural language, you're going to feel like you're in quicksand, and you're going to, it's a drains your energy. So why not understand and learn the language that you speak that resonates with other people at the same time? It's going to attract those people to you, and you're going to just, you're going to be living a life that feels like you're in a wellspring rather than in quicksand.
Yeah, totally. Well, as we were preparing for the workshop and the podcast, I went back to my tests, and I found out that I first took it in 2014. And back then I was the Maverick, and I think it was innovation and power. And so that was kind of like my first experience with Fascinate. And I remember being completely surprised and really realizing how people see you differently sometimes than you see yourself. Because if you look at all the other kind of assessments, the Enneagram and the Myers-Briggs, so I'm very introverted and very calm and, quiet. And then I got this word that says power, the Maverick. I'm like, what is this, right? This is completely different. And yet, when I was talking to people, they're like, yeah, that's how we see you. We see you as someone who creates new things and leads a new way. And I'm like, I guess, yeah, I like doing that, right? I needed to kind of make peace with this idea of power, and understanding it as something that I can do quietly, right? Power doesn't need to be loud. It just needs to be kind of like, to me, it's a quiet presence, but that somehow still has the ability to lead. So I remember, like, for me, that was life changing, and just really accepting that role and saying, okay, yeah, if that's what you want me to do, then I'll step into that role and kind of come out of the shadow, maybe a little bit as well. So
It's funny that you mentioned power, because I have almost the opposite. So power is my dormant advantage. Funny story about how I named my company. When I started the company, I worked with this brilliant person who I had worked with for years in my corporate role to help me come up with a name for my business. And together we came up, because my whole premise was, I want to be able to empower my clients to be better marketers and to do it their way, to find a path that is right for you. You don't have to follow the trends. And so we came up with Wield Marketing, put the power of marketing in your hands. It's not a bad name, but I didn't do anything. I sat on it for a year. And this was all before I knew Fascinate, didn't know anything about Fascinate, but I sat on it for a year. I didn't design a logo, didn't build a website, didn't do anything with the name, because there was something in my heart that was like, it doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel right. And I did my Fascinate test. And in my Fascinate test, my number one language is passion, which is the language of relationships and connection. and intuitiveness. And now that, then you've got this weighting of all of 7 languages. Well, my dormant, which is my least powerful or effective communication, is power.
Mm-hmm.
And I really struggled with this because I was a leader in my role for 8.5 years. In my last role, I'm like, but I am a leader. And then I realized power is about that natural ability to come in and dominate a room, and
Mm-hmm.
and whether you do it quietly or loudly, and making decisions quickly. And I realized the reason I had been struggling with wield is a word that is all about power, and it
Mm-hmm.
didn't sit well in my heart, but I didn't understand why until I did Fascinate.
Mm-hmm.
Then as a result of that, I'm like, that's not the name of my company. Then that can't be the name of my business. And so I really did some soul searching and digging, and wanted to really bring that as an HSP and an introvert myself, I wanted to bring that light that shines inside of us and allow people to bring that out. And so I changed the name of my company to the Firefly Effect, because the firefly is that beautiful little glow that sits inside everybody. And the Firefly Effect, because I wanted to simulate the butterfly effect, where one little firefly doesn't make a big difference, but imagine a whole field of fireflies, and how beautiful is that? And so it's about the culmination of bringing bringing joy and bringing a voice to everybody, and doing it in their own authentic way. So that's where the Firefly came from, and I have Fascinate to some degree to thank for that.
Yeah, but that's what it does for one, right? It really helps us with these words that we can then bring into our marketing, because like I say in marketing, like we're human, because we want to bring more of us to our marketing. So when people ask me, well, how do we learn to be authentic in marketing? Well, there's not like a 7-step list where you can learn that. It's going into that deeper inner work, and probably part of it is learning more about these 7 languages, and then bringing more of that language into your messaging. And that's what we're gonna talk about in this workshop on February 7th. So if you're listening to this and this resonates, we'd love for you to join us then. You can go to the link humane.marketing/workshop and sign up there. I want to wrap up with a question that I feel like is really timely, because we're talking about authenticity, right? In a time where AI has just developed like crazy over the last, let's say, 9 months. And we know as a fact, it's not going anywhere. It's not leaving anytime soon. It's definitely going to develop. So how does something like knowing deeply who we are, and having this language that helps us stand out, how does that help us in a time where everyone else is using AI and ChatGPT? How can we tap into that system more to feel like we're being authentic and standing out?
That's such a great question. And building authentic brands is such a big part of what I do. And I'll be honest, I have leveraged AI. I've wanted to learn. I'm like, I need to understand what everything, all the hype. I need to understand, so that we're not left behind. But I don't use AI to do my writing. I don't use AI to put words in my mouth. What I use AI for, frankly, is to help me do what I don't do as well. So for instance, distilling, when I have a great conversation with a client, I can record it on my Otter, put it into AI, and have AI help distill that down to what are those key points, so I can be more present and not feel like I have to take a million notes in a conversation, because I'm capturing it, and I'm going to leverage AI to help me create, what are these talking points that I need to make sure that I'm including in in the brand work, or whatever work I'm working on for that client. So I think there is a way to find to leverage the tools that are at our disposal, and AI is another tool. The challenge is when you're looking at somebody's work, it's going to become more evident in time. And that it's that it doesn't feel authentic. AI is only pulling from what's already out in the internet, right? It's not creating something that's from your heart. And so it comes down, I think, to trusting yourself and feeling confident that it's not about FOMO. It's not about looking around the room and seeing, what am I missing out on? I need to jump on this trend. I need to jump on this trend. I need to be on social media and posting 6 times a week or 5 times a week. I don't. I've realized that for me is leveraging what I feel confident and know in my heart based on my languages that I speak, how I'm going to fascinate someone, and trusting that process. I'm still going to leverage and look at it as a tool in my toolbox for myself. And then you have to be discerning when you're looking at other people and trust that the right people are going to find you, because authenticity, it's an untapped or an unnamed or it's a language that we speak. And when you're being authentic, people feel that. They feel the vulnerability, they feel the connection. And I think you just have to trust that's going to leverage the tools where they make sense, be discerning. And because AI, you're right, AI is not going anywhere. So
yeah, thank you.
I'm finding a way to bring it into what I need in a way that feels in alignment with my own values, right? I'm not going to use it to do all my writing because it doesn't feel authentic. And so it would feel disingenuous for me to leverage AI and have it write everything I need to write for myself.
Yeah, there's something to be said about written text. That's what we use it for, or what it's used for right now. But what I feel like this work with Fascinate and knowing your languages also helps us become more authentic, right? Because we then really tap into who we truly are and embrace that side of us, where before we're just kind of pulled into every direction. Oh, I should, kind of do whatever is selling like they're doing it, and then I'm doing a little bit of this and a little bit, and it's helping us understand, oh, no, there, I can really truly be myself. When you show up with clients and when you kind of step into that true version of yourself, I feel like the writing, okay, that's part of it, but it also just helps with the human and how you're going to show up with your clients, right?
There's so many of my clients that at the beginning of a workshop that I would have done with them, and they get their assessment and they're like, well, it says that I'm this, but I'm not this. My one person, passion was her dormant. And she's like, the name of my company is literally Passion, consulting or something. And I said, we went through the process, and what she understood was it doesn't mean you're not passionate. And it does, we have a preconceived notion of what these words mean, but when we unpack it, in which we do, we unpack it all in the workshops that we do, you learn that, and we dive into the stories of your life where you start to see that pattern of where this has been true. So it's not just words on a page. It actually we go back and we look and validate. And at the same time, it helps to provide this beacon for you. We create an anthem, that helps guide you and helps explain to people what you do in a really short, like 2 words. My anthem, after going through this process, is illuminating visions. And for me, it's in my e-signature, it's everywhere, but it has become, when I looked at my past, what lights me up and what excites me are these moments when I've been able to bring somebody else, we have an idea, we bring it to life, we launch a brand, we launch a new product, so those are the things, like that innovation is my why. The passion is the what I do, and how I do that is by listening. It's my mystique, it's the listening. So when I understood that about myself, now it helps me to choose and to be selective about what I do going forward. I call it a bit of it's a warm hug and a kick in the gut all at the same time, because it's like, yeah, this is who I am. And it becomes my guide to make sure that I stay on my path and I don't get distracted by these shiny objects along the way. So yeah, and the moments in that I've seen people's, like, the lights go on and kind of go, oh, you mean this is already who I am? And for some people, saying those words feels very egotistical at first, because it's like, well, I can't say that about myself. And then when we dive in deeper, it's like, but it's already how the world sees you.
Yeah, that's exactly how I felt about the power, right? It's
Yeah.
like, oh, but I'm very humble. I grew up very in this humble environment. I'm like, I can't say that. But it's like, well, yeah, it's like not me. It's just other
Yeah.
people who are seeing it that way. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and that's why I feel like truly, yes, AI, is part of our path and the direction we're going. And I actually feel there's a very positive side to AI, and I'll be writing about that in the Business Like We're Human book, because I do feel like it creates more spaciousness for actually being human. And
Yes.
that's part of this, right?
Yeah.
It's like, well, because we have AI for the mundane things, we can then focus on actually spending time on figuring out, well, what is my Fascinate language? How can I tap into that and be real? Because that's what we care about, is
Yeah.
having real conversations with real humans and taking the time to be human. So
Yeah.
I feel like, there's a world possible with both being very authentic and having AI as a tool, like you said.
I agree. I think when we have the confidence that you know who you are, the tools and all of these other distractions become just that. It's a tool that you can add to your toolbox.
Yeah,
Learn how to use it in a way that feels authentic to you, that helps you in your business, that saves time, saves energies, and I'm definitely in that camp where it is a tool.
right.
Uh, and it's a tool that when we use it well, to your point, you end up with this freedom of time, because something that might have taken me, an hour and a half to distill and go through, I can get it done in 10 minutes now,
Of course. Yeah.
right? I can get to that point where I needed to get to in 10 minutes.
Mm,
And then I still apply who I am as an individual, my authentic self, to bring that spin, or the necessary kind of finishing touches, or whatever you want to call it, so that it isn't just a cut and paste.
yeah,
Um, it's helping me think of it. I'm thinking of it as another virtual assistant
of
for
course.
me in
Yeah,
business.
totally.
I actually think it will help a lot of small businesses, especially because, you can do the roles of a number of different people that you
So
would have had
true.
prior time. So yeah,
Yeah.
I'm so
Well,
excited.
I really am also excited about this workshop that we have coming up, and what I also feel like we always do well in these collab workshops is that there's part teaching. You're going to share all of your wisdom about the Fascinate system, and we also always create space for being human and having these exchanges in the breakout rooms. And I think that's really also a big part of the learning, right? It's like, well, actually apply this now and have a conversation about how you are different or how do you feel you're different. So
Oh
really,
yeah,
really looking forward to that on
because
February 7th.
the embodiment of
Yeah.
it, and
Mhm.
that collaboration that you foster in the Humane Marketing Circle is really brilliant, because it allows people to take your guard down. This is a real humane group of people who are all gathered because we have a very similar approach to life. And, not just work, but life. And this is one aspect of it that it's freeing. It is really like giving yourself permission to be more of who you are. And Sally has this theme that runs throughout that I absolutely love, which is different is better than better. You know, when you think about it, you already, be more of who you already are, because that's what's going to make you feel good. And it's what's going to attract the people who appreciate that beauty that you bring to the world and that uniqueness. And, it's like, give yourself permission to be that person. So
Can't
thank you.
wait. Thank you
Yeah,
so much for sharing here on the podcast. And again, if you're listening to this before February 7th, definitely sign up and we look forward to seeing you there.
I will look forward to it. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Louise. Thanks so much for watching and being part of a generation of marketers who cares for yourself, for your clients, and for the planet. We really are change makers before we are marketers. So go ahead, be the change you want to see in the world. And I hope to see you again next week. Take care.